Missouri has a new governor, and the legislature's in full stride. And we're to talk to the person at the center of that legislative activity, Chairwoman Representative Holly Rader from down the Boot Hill. Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you for having me. This is a treat.
So you had a packed hearing room in your committee this week to talk about right to work.
We did.
One of the biggest issues we heard about in the campaign. Now we're hearing about in the legislative session. What's the status of the bill?
It just passed out of rules an hour ago, and so it will go to the floor next week.
Next week for debate. Now break down what right to work is.
So right to work is just one simple change. It allows a union member to choose to be in the union or not to be in the union. They don't have to be a part of a union just to keep their job.
I noticed in the hearing that there was a lot of people that testified, more than almost any bill that you normally see. I caught the last, I guess you were there for 5, I caught the last maybe hour or somewhere in the middle of it. There were a lot of sincere people that look at it as a freeloading, they look at it as hurtful to unions. I noticed you kind of dealt with them in a pretty soft way. I've seen other chairmen be pretty rough. It looks like you employ people though, right? So working people is not something that's a foreign thing to you, correct?
That's right. And you know, I have almost 50 employees. My husband and I run a cable contracting company across 7 states. And so we have, at any given day, we could have 200 people working for us. And that's our typical. And so with right to work, I know it's such an emotional issue. It's a very important issue to me. I live in the Boot Hill. You're from our area,
Yep.
you know.
West Butler County?
That's right. I mean, we are looking at Tennessee and Arkansas every day as having the same positives we do. They have low power, they have rail access, they have excellent port access, everything that we have, but they have right to work. And so we have our economic development guys down in the Boot Hill are constantly telling us, no, that we were not looked at for this job because of this. And so all that it does is it's going to bring an influx of opportunity for us because now Missouri will be a business-friendly state.
Let's talk about the effect on the economy. I've not seen union shops that deal with union employees testify at these hearings, but I do hear the economic development folks do testify and say this will help Missouri. If this passed in 2017, what can Missourians look to in 2018, 2019? What kind of jobs should they expect to see to know if it's working?
I wish I had a crystal ball to say. However, you know, we can look at Michigan, who passed in 2012, and they've gained 58,000 manufacturing jobs.
Wow.
You know, Missouri in the same time frame has lost 1,200. So our trend is going the wrong way. And one thing that I wanted to really stress in our committee hearing, because I know, I mean, I grew up very poor. I grew up, you know, I had my first baby at 16, and I had to worry paycheck to paycheck if I could feed my family. And so I know what that feels like. And when we had different ones coming to testify, you know, I know their fear. I know what that feels like to not know if you're going to be able to feed your family. And so it was so important to me, and it remains important to me, that they understand that union membership has increased in these other states because more jobs means more union jobs as well. And so no longer should they have to go to Kansas or should they have to go to Nebraska to work for a couple of months because their job ran out. There should be more jobs here for them to have. And so that's why it was so important for me to allow everyone to have a say, but then to also explain the economic advantage for union and non-union. I mean, this is something for all Missourians, not just those who aren't union. And I think that when you have the union bosses that are telling them, you know, hey, the sky's falling, they go home and they can't sleep at night. And the point is that that's just statistically wrong. It's not what has been proven in other states.
There's a political aspect to everything in Jeff City, including this. But I think it's fair to say there are a group of people that actually think it's good public policy. It's not a political thing. And I think it's been an interesting change, people carrying these bills that don't employ people to people carrying them that do employ people.
Right, and I think that I can explain this. I can explain that, you know, jobs is what's important. This is, you know, I'm not big on tax credits. This is free economic development for the state of Missouri. This is not something where the state's putting up a bunch of money and let's see if it comes in. This is just removing regulations. And that's what we want to do to make Missouri business friendly.
Let's talk about another thing that went through the legislature this week. It looks like no coincidence your committee heard right to work early. It looks like no coincidence the first bills passing are ethics bills. What'd you think of them?
You know, that's been the Speaker's priority issue since he came in. And so I expected it to be the first bill to hit the floor, and rightfully so. And we did. It was debated today. Nothing new. It was something that, that we debated last year. It was very expected, and I'm comfortable with it. I mean, the ethics bills have never bothered me. They've never been a top priority of mine.
Seems like they don't really hurt anything.
Right.
Sometimes I think people that criticize the culture in Jeff City maybe don't like the legislation you pass more than how you pass it.
Right. No, I would agree. And and when it comes to the ethics bills, I think that as just across America, government has started looking very bad in people's eyes, in my eyes as well. We've all been disappointed in our government. And so if this is one of those things that restores some confidence in our voters, that makes them feel better, I'm totally comfortable with it.
Lobbyists can't buy you dinner, but lobbyists that have lobbyists can buy everyone dinner. If they invite everyone, that's kind of the new rule.
I think that's kind of the new rule. And I eat healthy. I have my meals delivered, from metabolicmeals.com. I mean, I'm very, I'm the...
I sometimes have my meals delivered from Domino's, but I see what you mean.
I just, I'm not one that goes out and eats. I pop mine in the microwave to make sure I have, because sometimes we work 18 hours. Sometimes, we're there and we can't leave. And so the lobbyist meals in the past, it's been nice to have a lobbyist send pizza to the office, for if we're up all night on the floor. Last year, my paycheck protection overridden in the House, went to the Senate. It was 12:30 a.m. when it died in the Senate. And, staffers are sitting there until 12:30 in the morning.
But speaking of bills that have died, real quick, I want to get to prescription drug monitoring. Tell me where that's at.
We are starting that in the Senate this year. Senator Dave Schatz is taking that heavy load and lifting it, and I am such a fan of his. And he's really, we've been working with leadership, and so our hope is that we can get it into committee quickly, maybe get it to the floor quickly. And the new wind at our sail is right now we have almost half of Missouri's population in a county that has passed a PDMP.
Well, Representative, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you'll come back as the session goes on, and we'll keep track of all this legislation.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel. Two new folks, Tony Messenger and Joe Mannies. First, we'll leave you with the 6 leading Missouri economic indicators.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
St. Louis
Louis is a special place. This is home.
And we're more than a community.
We're a family. We value hard work. We sacrifice.
And even in tough times, we don't run. We work together.
Except if you're Stan Kroenke, a Walmart billionaire. He took our Rams to Los Angeles.
We just didn't lose a football team. We lost good jobs.
He hurt our economy, our families. He turned his back on us, our values, our town.
And for what?
So he can make millions more?
Well, we may not have our Rams, but this football Sunday, we can all send Stan and Walmart a message.
Shop local, not Walmart.
Shop Dearborn.
Shop Schnucks.
Shop and save.
Stand up for community.
Put our family first, because Kroenke may have taken our team,
But they'll never take away who we are.
At Ameren, Missouri, we're committed to providing cleaner energy for generations to come. Our new state-of-the-art solar energy center is a great example of that commitment. It's part of our long-range plan to deliver more than 30% of our power from cleaner resources. Making sure your energy future is not just brighter, but cleaner too. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. We're joined by our opinion maker panel. A couple folks I'm very glad to be on the first time. But first, friend of the show, Mark Dahlman, the Carpenters Union. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be here. Thank
Love
you.
the corduroy. Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, all things internet. Good to have you, sir.
Thanks, Scott. Good to be here.
Joe Manny's public radio here in St. Louis, person that everyone in Jeff City knows. Thank you. Welcome to being glad to be on. And David Barklage, friend of the show, the man the Barklage rule is named after. David Barklage, you've ran a bunch of Republican campaigns. They all seem to crescendo. This week in Jefferson City, Republicans dominate everything. The first thing they do is right to work. Is it going to be good or bad for them?
Well, I think it's not just right to work, it's where they go from there. The unions really are a core part of the Democrat Party and a core part of the Democrat Party's ability to succeed in elections in Missouri.
Is this about politics or policy?
It really is. I think right to work is so much about politics. Yeah. The question is that do you stop there? Do you look at recertification unions, paycheck protection, prevailing wage? Do you go after training funds for unions? Do you go after other things? What would be interesting is if Republicans stop at the quote perceived pro-jobs things, or if they go farther to kneecap the unions so the unions are unable to mount any kind of counterinsurgents or any other candidates in the future. And I think that is the real debate that will occur after right to work.
Mardon, let's look to me like the effect on the economy. I think people are sincere about that, but this seems like a bigger political issue than it is a policy issue.
No, it definitely is. Traditionally, in the past, not so much currently, but in the past, unions had been more geared towards the Democratic Party. Not in the currently, and even within the last decade, there've been a little bit of crossing party lines. I know I'm with the Carpenters Union. We are interested in labor. We don't look at the letter behind the name. So we have shifted gears. Others have been following. But I think it is to kneecap the unions and what they do. And when you get into past right to work and you talk about the training, I know we spend over $10 million of our private money on educating and training members on skills and also safety. So those things are just benefits for everyone, and it would be a shame to go down that path.
Tony Messer, you've been in the Capitol yourself as a person that's covered it. Is this a policy issue or a politics issue?
Oh, it's as David said, it's a politics issue, and I know a lot of the Republican lawmakers like to talk to it as a jobs issue, but it's a politics issue, and it's a politics issue for both the Republicans and the Democrats. The interesting thing to me will be how the unions decide to handle the debate this year, knowing that Governor Greitens has said he will sign a bill. Mm-hmm. It's completely different than it has been in the past. And I was talking to a union leader the other day who said there's really two trains of thought, and he wasn't sure which way they were going to end up. One is you fight everything tooth and nail because you've always fought everything right to work tooth and nail, and that's what you have to do to stand up for the working men and women of Missouri. Or you roll over. You roll over and let them do everything that David was talking about. You let them do paycheck protection. You let them do everything that they think that they want to do to destroy unions. And what happens? 2005 happens, where the Republicans had the governor's office, had the legislature, and did a so-called pro-jobs agenda, and they went too far. And what happened was a lot of that stuff ended up being unconstitutional and had to be rolled back. So there is a thought now that you just go ahead and let the Republicans do what they want to do. They control the entire body. They control what happens afterwards, which means that any of the bad things that happen, wages going down, manufacturers not coming to Missouri even though they have been recently, unemployment going up, any of those things that might happen as just a matter of regular economic cycles, the Republicans will own all of it.
Joe Manchin, you've heard all these arguments for many years. You'll see Republicans say, hey, we've been losing jobs. Missouri hasn't been growing as fast. That's their point is, what's it going to hurt? What do you think happens with this, and what's the fallout?
Well, there's a couple things. First, I think that if the Democrats are smart, but they often don't, they need to emphasize what's going on in other states. For example, Missouri actually grew faster than most of its neighboring states this last year or two. The Democrats should be talking about that. I'm just talking strategically here. I think if the Republicans succeed in making it mainly a jobs issue, economic issue, and they're always good at better than the Democrats, I think, at messaging, they can sell it to the public. However, if what happens is what Barklage talks about, where they then go after job training, they make it clear it's just a political thing, I think then it will come back to bite them, especially because they are already facing budget problems. I mean, before I came in here, I just finished doing a story. The state's looking at they're probably going to have to cut $400 million or more from what they had planned for the coming fiscal year. They're trying to blame it on Obama and this and that. That's not going to sell with the public. And whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It's not going to sell with the public. So the bottom line will be if economics start going south, and they're doing right to work on some of these other things, and the regular voters are like, well, this isn't helping anything, I think then it could really come back to bite them in 2018, especially if there's a right to work proposal on the ballot.
If I may say one thing, is that I think politics is overwhelmed right to work. It is substantive. When you're in our part of the state, Scott, where we grew up in the Boot Hill, we do compete for on terms of union jobs, et cetera. But I do think in terms of union labor issues, that it goes a lot farther than right to work if you're going to have a substantive impact.
And I do believe there's a lot of sincere people on this. Quick prediction here, does this go to the ballot in 2018?
You know, I think it does, but I'm not sure it succeeds. If you look at Indiana and other states, it's a hard row. People, and looking at the Missouri Constitution, they equivocate at the federal. They don't like to change the Constitution without
pro-right to work folks are putting this on the ballot if the governor's race goes a different way, though, right?
Yeah.
Does Labor get on the ballot?
I think they'll probably get on the ballot. Whether or not it'll pass is something else. They're hoping to copy what happened in Ohio in 2011. And if that works, I mean, while Kasich still won re-election, the Republican governor the next year, if you notice, the Kasich post-2011 is a lot different than the Kasich pre-2011.
Does it get to the ballot, though? Are we talking about this in 2 years?
Yeah, I think we're talking about it in 2 years.
Mark Dalton, you'd probably know more than anybody. Does it make it to the ballot?
It definitely does. And I am optimistic that the public will support labor. And from all the polling that we've done, it shows they do when they're educated on what the subject
it's just
really is.
When you get an opposition to a constitutional amendment, we've seen that it just is tough on any issue.
No, definitely.
Let's talk about one thing that'll be different than the last times we've seen Donald Trump. And whenever I saw the press conference, I was very excited you were coming on the show. Trump versus the media. He took it to another level. He called CNN fake news, and I wanted to know what you thought about it.
Well, I think he's not president yet, but I think it would be good for him to start acting a little more presidential. You can still put down reporters, but you can do it in a more subtle way. I mean, he's a billionaire businessman. I'm sure he knows how to do that. I was a little surprised that he sort of lost it.
I thought it wasn't smart, too. Not only was it probably wrong, it wasn't smart.
Well, that's my point. Okay, it plays to his subset of his base, but there are a lot of people who voted for him for various reasons that didn't have to do with some of his rhetoric on the campaign trail. It had to do with other stuff. And if they see him behaving non-presidential, now some of it's going to depend on how the rest of the press reacts. The Washington press, I used to be part of it 30 years ago. They're not always together. I was surprised that some other reporters didn't ask the question that the CNN reporter was trying to ask, because I've been at press conferences where somebody gets shut down and the next reporter says, hey, I'm going to ask the same question.
You were in D.C. before you had your driver's license?
Yes. I was 10. No, but I covered Reagan's first term and traveled with Reagan a lot. My point being is that
Covered Roosevelt too, but that's another story.
Yeah, interviewed Donald
I'm not
Trump.
going there.
Did interview Donald Trump once, right?
16 years ago.
Yes.
But my point being that Ronald Reagan never would have behaved like that. And he would have gotten the same point across, but it would have been much more dignified, much different.
Tony Messenger, you're a member of the media. I think the media probably hasn't handled the Trump presidency or the candidacy as well as they could have. But I thought that was a odd thing to do, to personally take on a news outlet like that.
I don't think the media knows how to handle President Trump yet, because the rules are changing. And part of the reason is the rules are changing within the media. The real interesting debate in media circles over the last couple of days isn't whether or not the president-elect was mean to CNN or not, because he's done that to Fox, he's done it to CNN, he's done it to the Washington Post, he'll do it to whomever he wants. It's whether or not what BuzzFeed did in putting up a document
Does that run on the Post
that wasn't quite vetted. I don't believe in the way that it ran in BuzzFeed. No, I believe that there is a way to report on things like that, that CNN actually properly reported it. CNN actually reported it fairly and responsibly, as did the New York Times and Washington Post and most of the other national outlets, in terms of reporting that that document was part of a discussion going on in the intelligence community. But they didn't just take that unvetted document and stick it up on the web for everybody to read. That's the interesting debate in the journalism world right now, separate from whether or not President Trump likes you or doesn't like you or whatever.
Let's talk Missouri. Donald Trump continues to go down this road. Yep. I know people in West Butler County that will be very excited about him calling out CNN. Overall, though, does that play?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone can argue there's a lot of people that voted for Trump because, not that they liked Trump, but they disliked Clinton. And I think there's a lot of those people that, if he continues with the attacks that he is, with attacking the media, they're going to be turned off, and maybe they weren't big fans of his in the beginning, and this isn't going to help gain them as fans.
David Barclay, does this start to, over time, does this start to be what brings Trump lower and lower in the polls?
Actually, and I'll just say it's funny, when a Democrat loses, it's because they liked the Democrat less. The Republican, when a Democrat wins, it's because they like the Democrat more. Just kidding, Mark. But here's what I think, is that he's shown some brilliance, more so than political strategists. He's taken on the press. The press is seen as a pack, good or bad. They're seen all together. So when one press person does something wrong, they all get blamed. And I think he's put the spotlight on them to where their popularity has declined so much. They're right above political consultants, I think. And so the problem is, you've got a president who through Twitter is making the news every day and taking on the press, which made his primary, made his election. And candidly, I think he's diminishing them, so they're them as a force to hold accountable, to hold Washington accountable, is collapsing. And so I think we're making Donald Trump the strongest. Oh, no, but I think we're making Donald Trump the strongest president that we'll see in modern times.
Do you think they should have given him a little bit of an actual honeymoon, like most presidents?
I think they should have stepped back, and they should have. They need to put aside their bias, their emotion, and everything else, and sort of re-engage this person at a different level. I think otherwise, they're going to continue to diminish themselves, and it's going to play to Trump's strength, and he's playing it brilliantly.
I watched some very intelligent Republican politicians be a little bit like what Tony said. They didn't know how to handle him in the primary. I think the media's got a little bit of that. I think it is hard to handle a guy like this. Well, quick prediction, though, if he continues on in Missouri, does this start to bring him a year from now lower in Missouri?
No, I actually think in terms of populist politics and the base, it probably helps him, and as long as he keeps the press off tilt, then he's really managing the agenda.
Tony Messer, let's talk about one group of people that probably are worse thought of than the media, and we have to look hard, but it's lobbyists. I think there's a lot of folks in Jeff City that candidly would admit your coverage of this has made ethics a bigger issue in this state. Big issue right now about lobbyist gifts. There's a kind of a ban moving through the House. The governor put a total ban throughout the executive branch. What do you think? I mean, are the things you've seen so far going to be remedied what you've been writing about?
I think there is a serious step towards potential success in terms of some ethics legislation passing that changes the culture in Jeff City. But there's a long ways between now and the middle of May when the legislative session ends. And I don't think that just what's happening in the Capitol is going to be the be-all, end-all. Senator Rob Schaaf has a much more comprehensive bill in the Senate than even the governor is proposing, both Republicans. And Senator Schaaf has been talking to national groups who plan on coming into Missouri to build on the passage this last year of campaign finance reform, which is a part of the overall cultural change that needs to take place in the state that the governor hasn't yet embraced. And so there are Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, all sorts of folks talking about ethics. And one of the first bills that got a hearing is an ethics bill. That's good for Jefferson City.
It wasn't a mistake this year.
That's good for the state. But having sat through some of these ethics debates before, you got to read the bills really carefully, and what happens at the end of the session really matters in terms of how serious the legislation is going to be.
Tony may be seen in the future as the greatest advocate for the sustained majority, Republican majority, because when we took control in 2001, it was not a matter of Democrats, Republicans, a matter of absolute control, and Democrats had it for 40 years. And the ethics were out of bounds, and that's what brought them down. I don't know how many articles that Joe and others wrote that I was able to use in campaigns to defeat incumbent Democrats. So if Republicans want to stay in majority, they need to toe the line. They need to adopt these reforms that Tony's advocating.
You've said this for a while.
As a strategist, the ethics matters, but more importantly, keep the majority. If they want to keep it, they have to get rid of the gray lines. And so I'm a strong advocate. I think the governor made a good first step, but I think if I were him, I'd follow up by asking the legislature to pass a bill specifically doing what his executive order has done
Joe Manis, does that need
in
to
a
happen
strong
before it
way
pass?
and show by leadership.
Possibly. I think, though, one of the problems that Greitens has is, even though he has put out some noble stuff, that it's a fact that most of the money he got for the general election, we don't know where it really came from. And so for you to be, pressing ethics, and now to be fair, he was not for campaign donation limits. But when stories are eventually going to come out as reports are filed on where some of this money came from, it may hurt his case as opposed to if he had been more upfront about it. I mean, he got $17 million from the Republican Governors Association, and that came from somebody else.
It's a broad deal. I mean, you got campaign finance reform. Granted, we had more dark money, more out-of-state money than in all their elections combined. But that's a separate issue. We can put it all as one, but I mean, it's sort of like the law. There's so many different issues. And so I think him taking a stand moves the agenda forward in one area.
But it can hurt his credibility depending on how he handles this. That's
Mark Dalton, wrap up. 1 minute left. Who won the week?
I think Big Business with the right to work.
That's what I mentioned. Who won the week?
I think Governor Greitens won the week. I think he is controlling the agenda in the legislature.
I would say lobbyists. You give them, don't have to buy gifts. You give them contributions. You revolving door. They might have, but if not, I would say maybe Lauren Arthur and Peter Meredith on ethics.
I would say Governor Greitens. I think he at least has been trying to set a tone, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Republicans, they've won the title, undisputed champions. Now it's theirs to hold.
To the victory or the spoils, and we'll talk about how they use those spoils throughout the session on This Week in Missouri Politics. We'll see you next week. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.